Goods, Hurtak, Vieira, Miranda, Maniscalco, and Citro.
Here,
We have a physical quorum.
May 5th, excuse me. We are here, hearing item agenda number 54, file number DE1 22-34.
Move to open
C.
54 and 55.
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Items to the side.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. We're here on item number 54, which is regarding a petition for review that was filed for DE1 22-34 for the property located at 1417 East Mohawk Avenue. This petition was filed by Gregory Gary on behalf of Mohawk Club LLC. Mr. Gary is originally requested for a design exception to allow a large paver parking pad to remain within the front yard and in front of a single-family house without an attached carport or garage. Staff denied the request on the basis that the application did not meet the requirements of Code Sections 27-60 and 27-60, 27-211.2.1. City Council was provided copies of Code Sections 27-60, 27-211.2.1, sample motions, and rules of procedure. The standard of review for this hearing is de novo, and that's governed by Code Section 27-61, subsection J3. In a de novo hearing, City Council is allowed to accept new evidence, take testimony, public testimony, and make a decision to determine whether or not the petitioner meets the criteria set forth in Code Section 27-60 and 27-211.2.1. Staff remotely should be Andy Mikulski, who's going to provide an overview of the application and the decision by staff. After hearing from all parties, City Council can take the following actions. City Council can affirm staff's decision and deny the request for the design exception, or staff can overturn, or City Council can overturn staff's decision and grant the request for the design exception. And with that, I'll turn the rest of the presentation over to Mr. Mikulski.
If I can, before Mr. Mikulski talks, I would just like the council to please receive and file any ex parte written documents that have been made available.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And if there have been any verbal ex parte communications related to this case, please disclose them at this time. Thank you.
We had a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Record reflect the motion carried unanimously.
Mr. Mikulski should be on the line.
Aye. Go ahead, sir. You're muted.
Andy Mikulski, Urban Design. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And may I share screen, please?
I'm sorry, sir, you need to be sworn in. And is there everybody that is going to be giving any kind of testimony, could you please be sworn in?
Sir.
Please raise your right, you need to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very
I
much,
do.
Mr. McCluskey. Please proceed.
Okay.
Oh.
And can anyone see my screen?
Yes, but the PowerPoint's not up.
Okay. And how about now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you see full screen, or is this preview mode?
No, it's preview mode. There you go.
Okay. And now. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Council. Andy Mikulski, Urban Design. I'll run through the case this time. Oops. Applicant Mohawk Club LLC, the agent is Gregory Gary, 1417 East Mohawk. Proposed design exception is to allow a paver parking pad to remain within the front yard of a single-family house without an attached carport or garage. This is the criteria of review. And then now the determination, we found after urban design staff reviewed the request, it was determined the paver parking pad and driveway is inconsistent with 27-211.2.1C footnote 3, which is below in bold. No driveway shall be constructed from the road to the front facade of the principal structure unless providing vehicle access to an attached garage or carport. And then I'll run through skip the middle part. The three criteria that did not satisfy. The first is exception, interferes with the rights of others. Neighborhood enhancement received a code complaint about the work being done without permits, which resulted in the citation. The exception is not the minimal possible. Parking can be accommodated to the side or the rear of the parcel. There's a paved alley that provides access, or the applicant could also provide parking on the side of the structure. There's room for that. Granting the request would grant a special privilege. Other similar properties within the area and within Seminole Heights have adhered to the code and have not done work without permits. And then subject parcel. The current zoning is Seminole Heights CI, commercial intensive. This is the picture provided by the applicant of the house and the work that was done. This is on Mohawk looking at the front. Site plan provided by the applicant. And now some aerials. This is from the south. So this is from the north looking towards the south. You could see the paved alley in the rear, and there is parking in the rear. This is the rear, again, the rear yard from a different view. And then the applicant did provide these in the record of adjacent structures that do have parking in the front. It's just important to note that these were built before the Seminole Heights zoning code was enacted in 2011. And any new construction would not be allowed. This is what we're trying to avoid is the parking in front of the structure. And that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions for myself?
Is there any questions for staff? Councilman Carlson.
Is there any requirement that they have grass or some kind of other surface in front? Is pavers and I don't know if they're impervious or not, but if they're not, is there some kind of exception that would allow some other kind of surface that would drain water that's not grass if they don't park on it?
Well, there's an impervious surface requirement of, I believe it's 50%. So in theory, so you could have pavers in the front if you had a patio. That doesn't, we would be okay with that. That is allowed, but this is clearly, this was applied, the application was for a parking pad. And you could see what makes it a parking pad are the pavers go to the edge of the roadway. So if this were a patio, we would expect there to be some kind of delineation. I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but some sort of grassed area or landscaped area that you would not be able to drive a car through. And does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, Mr. Gary, you've got 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've been the property owner there for 12 years, and we've had previous tenants using the property, and they always just parked in the front yard. I have photos of up and down the whole street. Half the neighborhood is parking in their front yard. I'm wedged in between two apartment complexes, so they're filled. They got the whole front on that side and front on this side. If you want to look at this, I can show you this picture. You can see that they're parking all on both sides of me. So at night, when they come in, they park in front, they're parking up and down the streets. I have, these are just neighbors, how they're parking their cars. You know, I know it's intensive commercial, but this is what they're doing. All up and down the street on Mohawk. And some people, I asked for maybe a circular driveway so I could at least maybe do something like that, but they said I need to have 120 feet. I only have like 50 feet. So these are all on Mohawk Avenue. It's surrounded with trees. So I want to show you a picture what the property looked like before. I mean, I've spent an extensive amount of money to try to improve it. Actually, it's one of the nicest properties on the street now. And all the neighbors, I mean, they all love it. They love the property. They all made great comments about how nice it looks. You see, this is how, I don't know if you can see how clearly, but the yard was always like muddy and the trees were always falling on it. I mean, and everybody just pulled into the yard. They drove up the curb and they parked on it. In the back, because if you look at the site plan, because the property is commercial intense, I have a fence across the back here. You can see there's a fence line going across the back, and then they come from the back. I had storage, and I used the back of the property for commercial purposes, you know, for warehousing, storage, you know, things like that. And the front, I used, you know, to support the income. I hired a paving company, and they came out and they graded the property, they sloped everything properly, they did everything, and the pavers are pervious. In between each paver, there's a slot for water to go down to retain. I went ahead and asked all the neighbors. I mean, I have from everybody on the street. Everybody on the street said they like it. It relieves the parking. I mean, every neighbor around me, the apartment complex guy said it's great, what an improvement. I mean, it's a showcase property on the street. I mean, it's just a small bungalow, and the only person that called and complained was a disgruntled worker. I had some worker doing some cleaning up, and I handed him a company check to pay him, and he said, I want cash. And I said, well, look, we're paying, we have to have a record. We give you a check. So he says, if I don't get cash, I'm gonna complain. I'm gonna call code enforcement. And I said, all right, just, I said, okay, whatever. So 2 days went by, and I made arrangements to give some guy to give him his cash, and he already called and complained and called this complaint. So, I mean, as far as the property, it's been nice and clean. It's easy to blow the leaves off. The tenants that live there could just pull in and park instead of fighting on the street. And then, I mean, if you look at the property, you can see, look, this is what everybody's property is looking like on that street, with cars parked on it. I mean, this is acceptable. This is acceptable. Have all this stuff in their parking. So I went driving through the neighborhood this week, and I took a look at all these different properties that have parking. I look at this guy. This has got a nice, beautiful parking pad. It's very much like what I have. This is one. Wait, here's another. Let me see. Here's another one. This is a whole parking pad in front of their house. Then this is another one. So, I mean, I just went driving around looking at who's got the same situation. So, I know with all the city codes, and because they change the codes and they do all this thing back and forth, it puts all these restrictions. Yes, it would be perfect if the property wasn't wedged in between two apartment buildings, and the way it goes, I'm a commercial building right in the middle of two commercial complexes. So I don't see how, by me paving that front area with pervious pavers. You see all those little, those grooves in between all the pavers? That's where water goes in. So with all that in fact, I mean, I just can't understand, and still this is the driveway. Coming through here goes the driveway to the back. So, and there is green space. I left green space all the way around the thing. And let's see, what else can I say? I guess I'm asking city council to, you know, bear with me and, you know, try to let me get through with this because, I mean, we did spend over $15,000 on this property to try to clean it up. I painted the building, I fixed everything, and I'll let my wife speak. She might have something to say.
Oh, do I need to take the testimony, or I can just, I would like to.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So my name is Lynn. I'm Gregory Gary's wife, and I would like to stand up for him because, well, in the last 2 years, we really worked very hard to make this property look nice and clean and neat. And yes, actually, in like 2 years ago, before he paved the front yard, it was, all muddy, and the Florida weather, especially in the summer, and when the storm comes, and every time we pull over and, to talk to the tenant or whatever, do anything, and we just jumped off the car and stepped into the mud and making a royal mess. And then we thought, okay, we can make it better. It was not our intention to break the rule or whatever. Our intention is just very simple and, I can say, just want to make our property nice. And that's what we did. And, he worked so hard to put the paver in and make sure, this paver has, the space in between and let the water go in. And I just want to say that we do appreciate and respect the city's rule or whatever. It was not our intention to break the rule. But, after we spent this huge amount of money to make it, just wanted to make it clean and nice. And so we would like to have your forgiveness, to let us go. And so thank you so much.
See, I guess I'm misunderstanding commercial intensive, C1. So when we got the property, it's all commercial. So I don't know what rules fit with commercial, but I guess either way, I went ahead, I got all the neighbors, like you can look at all the addresses, they're all surrounding my house. All of them, say that it's much better than parking on the grass. If taking up the pavers and grass doesn't grow there because of the trees all covering it, it just doesn't grow. And then they start driving on it. If I take up the pavers, it's gonna look like an eyesore there again. So, it's kind of like, where are these pictures here? This is just right down the street from me. If you let that exist, and they don't have any pavers there, but still, and then the cars are all parked in, like this is how everybody parks on the street. So I didn't think it was gonna be a problem. The problem, I had the thing paved for about a year until this guy complained. So there was no complaints about the property. I know code enforcement doesn't come out unless somebody complains, but it wasn't a neighbor. So I don't know if you could help me. I circled the whole neighborhood I went through. I sent everybody the money. I sent in the money for the permit. I sent in for the design exception. We do have a large pervious area in the back. If he showed you on the site plan that the back of the property is all pervious, all back there. So that's 50% of the lot has grass. So there's plenty of area for rain to go for that property.
Does that finish your presentation?
I don't know. I just hope you can understand my point of view. If you just look at, like I said, I'm wedged in between those two apartment complexes. They're parking all in front of the place, and it's just, well, you see, I have a 50-foot frontage wedged in between the apartments, so what would you do?
Councilman Maniscalco.
I just had a question. You had mentioned, you know, how the pavers are and the cracks in between, and that's where the water goes. But during a very hard rainfall, does water ever pool? Does it ever flood? Anything
Never.
like that?
No, never. Before, it was just one big mud puddle.
Yeah.
You know, but now everything flows perfectly down the street, in the pavers, through the yard, and that's it. It doesn't flood at all.
And your neighbor across the street, from that photo you showed of the front of your house, they have the same kind of pavers or similar to? I saw pavers there for the driveway.
No, the neighbor across the street have that circular driveway.
Okay.
They have a circular driveway, and then the other neighbors are just pulling up on the yards.
Okay, and then you have the signatures of all the surrounding neighbors,
Yes, I
correct?
do.
Okay, all right, that's it, thank you very much.
And I can get more, I didn't want to keep wearing everybody, I stopped at everybody's house, I went for a week, back and forth, after work in the morning. I took pictures up and down the street. I have about 60 pictures here on my phone that could show you different times of the day with all the cars parked.
Okay, thank you very
Councilman
much.
Miranda.
Thank you. I'm just going with what the petitioner just said, Mr. Gary. There was only incident I had was one like this on Gray Street, one block west of Del Mabry. And they had done the same thing. And the city made them take all the pavers on the right-of-way out. I'm just telling you what I know, what I've seen. And the buildings that you identified on both sides that are commercial, they were built or constructed, or wherever you want to call it, prior to 2011 when the new law came into effect. That's what I read into the record. And you said you had a permit for this?
I said, no, I went through trying to permit it after the fact permit. And then they wouldn't accept it, so then I went for the design exception, which, you know, I acquired for that permit. And then I went through, I guess, another process where they failed me, and then I came back, and now I appealed it, hoping that people here would just kind of feel my side. I mean, I know the city passes these rules, and they just, okay, this street, we're gonna blanket, this is the Horizon 2000 or whatever, everything's gonna be like this. But sometimes it's not always practical for every dwelling. And then we get a variance, you know, there's some leeway to work with you. And I'm kind of asking the same thing here.
And then you said you have a rental. This is a rental, so I
Yes,
guess you
I
have a
rent
rental
the property.
certificate. You have a rental certificate?
I think we do. If I don't have a rental certificate, we'll get a rental certificate.
No, I'm just asking a question. I didn't
Yeah.
mention it, you did.
No, I don't, we had, the tenant was there for 8 years, since 2000. I got the building in 2011, actually, when they changed the code thing. So,
Because what happens in a rental property versus a property without one, your taxes are different. That's all I want to tell you.
okay, well,
I'm not trying to in any way hurt
no,
you.
no,
I'm
we
just
want
saying
to
what I
comply with
know.
that.
That's it.
Any other questions? Anything else that staff would like to add?
Kamaria Pettis-Malva from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to distinguish City Council from some of the photographs that the petitioner did show to City Council. Some of those properties did have garages, and some of those had carports, which is the requirement needed in order for pavers to be on the property. So I did want to distinguish that.
But there is a garage.
I did want to distinguish that.
Yeah, but this is a garage right
If I
here.
may just finish my statement. I just wanted to distinguish the criteria in the code, and staff again can explain the code provision that this application does not meet and why staff denied it, and distinguish it from the other photographs that the petitioner has provided to City Council. And I'm sure staff, Mr. Mikulski, can distinguish that criteria of the code and why this application was denied.
Mr. Mikulski, are you there?
Well, the only thing is, there is a
Mr.
garage
Gary?
on,
Sorry, hang on.
sorry.
You'll have time for rebuttal.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, and can you see my screen?
Yes,
Okay, and you see the PowerPoint zoning administrator determination?
yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the code section that Ms. Camaria Pettis Markle was just referring to. No driveway shall be constructed from the road to the front facade of the principal structure unless providing vehicle access to an attached garage or carport. So we would be, so the intent of this code is to, if you did have a driveway, that it would actually terminate in a carport or a garage. So if there were a garage or carport here, that'd be acceptable to have the driveway, or, whatever side it were on. But the intent is, this code is, we don't want to see parking in front of the main structure. That was, it goes to the whole walkability, trying to increase the walkability of the neighborhood, and it's having vehicles in the front is kind of detrimental to that feeling of pedestrian comfort. And I know there's existing structures here that have parking issues, but I mean, that's why this code provision was enacted. It's to, stop doing this. And, if it's existing, we do grant leeway to existing structures if they're not doing work or if they're not doing major renovations. We're not going to make people, if they're not doing anything to their house, we don't make them come back and retrofit their house to meet the new code. But if they do work, above a 50% threshold, we do require them to comply with the code.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make comments? Do we have anybody online? Mr. Gary, you've got time for rebuttal.
And Mr. Gary, did you want to put those photographs into the record?
Yes, I'll put the photographs to the record. I guess, we do have a garage in the back of the property there, so I don't know, see, the one-story masonry building is a garage. So, and I mean, I don't understand if I can make a carport but, I mean, the bottom line here is that, the work is done. I mean, I've tried every way to make it legal, and to actually take it apart and ruin the property. It just seems unfair because of the situation. I'm right between the two apartment complexes, and they're monopolizing the parking. And this is the only way the tenants could just come in and park, 3 cars in the front, that's it. And you can't park in the driveway because then it blocks any parking to the back to the storage. So, I mean, we're not hurting anybody. We're not upsetting the whole rule of, if we're in the middle of Swan Avenue, let's say you're in the middle of, I don't know, Parkland Estates or Beach Park, and I did something like this, yes, that's probably not gonna fit with the neighborhood. But this is a commercial street. It's a commercial property. It's on back of Hillsborough Avenue. I mean, this thing about pedestrians walking down the street, they're walking up and down the middle of the street. There's no sidewalks on that street. If they want, we could put they don't put any sidewalk there. So, I mean, this is not a planned, developed neighborhood. This neighborhood has been here since the 1920s. You got 50-foot front, there's no room.
Does that end your rebuttal?
Well, I mean, the rebuttal is, I just wish you would understand my point and grant me this simple okay. It's not a big deal, and I'm happy and nobody cares. The city, nobody's going to go through fighting this whole issue. Am I right?
Is that the end of your rebuttal?
And I got all the neighbors that signed. They like it. Okay, go ahead. That's it. That's the end. Give me the verdict.
Move to close?
A motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Record reflect motion passed unanimously. What is the pleasure of council? Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a motion to overturn the zoning administrator's denial. I move to overturn staff's denial of design exception application DE 122-34 for the property located at 1417 East Mohawk Avenue because the applicable general standards should be waived as set forth in sections 27-60 and 27-211.2.1C. I mean, the gentleman has already stated his case and has support from, I think, quite a few neighbors surrounding. You have some commercial next door, you have, I see what the property looked like before, and that's why I asked you, is there any flooding, is there any, you've improved the property, in my opinion. And so for that reason, or those reasons, I move to overturn the denial.
There is a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goos. Is there any discussion?
I can appreciate what Councilmember Councilmember Maniscalco said, and the second by Councilmember Goods. However, just by the experience of knowing what happened on Gray Street and others, I will not be supporting the motion.
Any other comments? Roll call vote.
Miranda,
No.
Hurtak, Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira. Yes. Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Miranda voting no and Hurtak being absent.
Thank you very much.
So that's it? I'm good?
Congratulations, Mr. Gary.
Oh, thank you, people. Thank you so much. So you still want all these for the record?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You have it all. Thank you. Here's an envelope for the pictures.
Move to remove item 55, cannot be heard.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods to remove item number
55.
55, which is file number SU 122-19-C. Roll call vote.
Hurtak, Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Miranda. Vieira. Maniscalco.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Thank you very much. Next will be agenda item number 58, file number PW 22-74-238.
Motion to move the resolution.
So moved. Item 58.
Yes, motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. Roll call vote.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Hurtak, Vieira. Maniscalco.
Yes.
Miranda. And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Thank you very much. Item number 59,
So
file
moved.
number
Second.
E 2022-16. Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Hurtak, Miranda. Vieira. Goods,
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Item number 63, file number CM 22-73-829.
Did 62, right?
Good afternoon, Council. Morris Massey, Deputy City Attorney in connection with item 63. We prepared a memo. The way that the naming policy for street renaming, it works, honorary anyway, is that real estate is supposed to be gathering information about the person and then processing a recommendation. So that, and I think that's where the matter stands at this point in time.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say, in the backup materials, there's an executive order by the mayor which summarizes the conclusions of her task force. But in the whereas clause, I think it's the third whereas clause, it says, whereas the mayor by charter has the right to oversee facilities of the city and naming. I just want to say I strongly object to that, and that is something maybe we can clean up in the charter. But there's nothing in the charter specifically that gives the mayor the right to name, solely name buildings. And so I would suggest that the mayor rescind the executive order and replace it with one that doesn't state something that is, I believe, an inaccurate interpretation of the charter.
I understand, Councilman Carlson, we respectfully, we reviewed the charter when we did the executive order, and she does have control over all facilities, and so that, inherent in that is the naming, and that was how we interpreted the charter. I understand.
If you have case law
Sure.
that shows that, because I've had an attorney look at it, if you have case law to prove that,
Sure.
please send it to all of us, and we'll
Sure.
look at it
Okay.
and review it. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Mr. Massey, that has to be after he or she, or whoever the mayor is, may have the ability to do that, but that's got to be approved by the council, isn't it?
Oftentimes, I mean, things get named in different ways, frankly. Streets are typically done by plat, so the plats come before you for being named. One of the difficulties, especially with street renaming, is that officially renaming streets become a real problem from a delivery of services, 9/11. So if you start officially renaming streets, then you're causing everybody, all the businesses and residents that live on that street to, change their address. Then you gotta make sure that the police and fire department and the US Mail Service and everyone else knows and that the street name is different. So that creates a lot of confusion. So we have been asked, not by the county 9/11 services really, to avoid official street renamings to the maximum extent possible. But the street names typically come to you in by way of the subdivision plat. So the honorary naming is what this was really supposed to cover. So.
Councilman Goose.
That's my point. That's what this was about, the
Right.
honorary. And I know I had a couple of pastors, good pastors that passed away, and I do know Miss Ford. I know she's been over there, serves that school, and everybody knows St. Peter Claver. So this is more or less was an honorary.
Yes, sir.
And before I didn't do the application, staff went out to them, they did the work and
Right.
brought it back, we moved. So that's what I'm asking now, the staff to go out and
Okay.
do that, get that done and bring it back and.
Right, and
get
real
approval.
estate has been directed to do that, so.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Is Yvonne Ford any relation to Clarence Ford?
That's his wife.
That's his wife? Oh, very good.
His wife.
Very well-known individual, and we know his story, so.
Councilman Carlson.
Just my second bite at this. I would ask my colleagues to please pay attention to these executive orders. In the whereas clauses, we've seen things that were slipped in by the last administration that took away the powers and rights of city council. And this is an example in this administration of exerting, I think, inaccurately exerting authority over this. And I think we need to be careful of it, and we're obviously going to need to impact the charter. The work of the task force it appeared to be good, and the recommendations were good, but saying that city council has no even approval authority, we don't even, by the way, that whereas, just in 3 or 4 words in the whereas clause, we have no approval even of these changes. And I think that it's an overreach, and whether it was intentional to try to take away the rights of city council or not, I would remind the city attorney's office that city attorney, as the way the charter is written now, has 3 clients: the mayor, city council, and the city of Tampa. And if there's a conflict between the interpretation for the mayor versus the interpretation for council, I would suggest that the city attorney's office seek advice and input from their other client, which is city council, and maybe even from the public as to what the interpretations of the charter should be, or that we try to clarify it, that we should not just automatically hand power to one or the other. If it was the other way around, where the city council attorney was trying to exert a power and take away power from the mayor, we would hear from the city attorney's office complaining about that. But in this case, it was kind of slid into a whereas clause. So I would just ask everybody to be cautious, and in particular, the city attorney's office, which by Florida bar rules has an obligation to adhere to its responsibilities regarding its client, city council. Thank you.
Just quickly, and I don't want, I understand your concern, but I don't want to get in an argument over it. The way we see this, we represent the city as a corporate entity. So we represent the city as a whole, and we try to interpret the charter and the laws in accordance with what we believe is the correct legal interpretation of that. We understand there could be some differences, and we're happy to discuss those with you. But
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Goode.
Mr. Massey, and thank you for that. I think Mr. Carlson has brought up a point, so hopefully we can get back with a better interpretation with what he's asking for. But I think going forward in the future, I think when we do have a charter meeting, I think we need to look at, when we talk about interpretation, sometimes if there is a conflict with the administration and this council, we say that the charter says the city attorney will be the catch-all to that, but sometimes it seems it still may be a butting of heads. So I'm hoping that when we do meet, we look at how we go forward when that does happen, who else could interpret it, whatever verbiage we have to make sure everyone's on the same page. So hopefully we'll be looking into that. But again, thank you for the rationale on it.
If I can, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If the city council were to express a request of the mayor in terms of the executive order, to the point that Councilman Miranda suggested, that it show up perhaps on the consent docket, is that a possible thing to request and ask that to be put into it, if that's the pleasure of, if that's the pleasure of council? I'm not saying that that is, but I'm just asking
Again, the way this was set up is that it was trying to set up a process, because a lot of these requests come in, not only from council, but from individuals, so that there is some baseline rules that everyone has to abide with. There's a process so it's vetted and it's done uniformly, because the way these requests were being done, it was not. It was kind of ad hoc here, ad hoc there. Different rules applied to different people. So this was an effort to come up with uniform rules, and so the mayor, as the administrator, basically chief administrative officer of the city, who has control over the naming of the facilities generally, that's how we came up with this process, and that's why it was set up the way it was set up. Now, can we entertain possible changes? I'm not saying that that's not impossible, but that's the rationale behind the executive order. So,
Thank you, Mr. Massey.
I guess, Chairman, I guess what he's trying to say, not being an attorney myself and not understanding everything attorneys say sometimes, what he's trying to say is the city's got about 2,000 blocks of streets, and if somebody turns it in the neighborhood and want a sign, there's gonna be 2,000 signs coming up tomorrow. No, that's not gonna happen. That's what he's trying to say, I guess.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Mr. Massey.
Thank you.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, thank you.
Agenda item 64.
Thank you. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Council, I want to apologize to council because I was prepared to do a verbal report, but I believe, after talking with the city attorney on short notice, that that's inappropriate, and it's more appropriate for me to come back and go through the process of submitting a written memorandum and have it gone by the city attorney to address some issues that she and I just discussed, frankly, over lunch, unfortunately. And I apologize for that, but I just want to ask the council's indulgence to be able to have the opportunity to come back with something written in advance so that you could have it and the city attorney can have it.
What date are you asking for?
I was looking at the 19th, but then I just want to be ready for the charter workshop on the 23rd. So it's either council's pleasure for the 19th or the 26th, if council would do so.
19.
Is that a motion?
Motion that Mr. Shelby return with a written report under staff reports, May 19th, 2022.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Is there any discussion?
Yeah. I just,
Councilman Carlson.
just quickly also, and by the way, my objection to the last thing was not the advice from the committee. The advice from the committee was fine. It was the 3 words that assert control by the mayor's office over the naming of buildings. In this case, if it appears that the city attorney's office is trying to supersede the powers of the city council attorney, and we certainly would not try to do that in the other direction, but city council has every right to ask its attorney to develop ordinances or reports. In fact, the city attorney's office has insisted on that many times lately and tried to absolve themselves of any kind of work with the city council, even though they're obligated to by the charter. And so I would just remind the city attorney's office again that one of their clients by charter, unless they want to change it, one of their clients is city council, and they have an obligation by Florida bar rules to work in the best interest of their client. They don't represent us individually, but as a body they do, and they have an obligation to represent us and to work with our attorney who's set up by charter as well. Thank you.
And to that point, that is actually one of the issues that is my responsibility, that I had not done that in advance of today's meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I take responsibility for that. Oh,
Councilman Goose.
That was I was gonna wonder, because I think the motion was for you to come back
yes,
to give a presentation in reference to that,
it was.
be it verbally or written, but I believe it was you to come back and make a presentation.
It was, but it's in talking with the city attorney, and I don't disagree that the better protocol with regard to this opinion would be in writing. So I apologize for not having that today.
We still have the motion on the floor. Roll call vote, please.
Viera,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak, Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes,
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
thank you very much. Agenda item number 65. File number CM 22-73220.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Goods.
I mean, 65 and 64 coincide with each other, do they not, sir?
Yes.
And Mr. Shelby has not had his report.
Yep.
I would prefer that both these items be heard at the same time,
Second.
to coincide with what's going on. I just think that they're both an issue, they both coincide with the other, and I would not want to hear one and not hear from the city attorney what he has to say, city council attorney at the same time.
Is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just with regard to this motion, it says the feasibility on directors and officers insurance, but as I recall, that wasn't the proper term. What is the proper term?
It's basically public officials and employees' liability coverage.
Public officials and employees' liability coverage. Did you want to amend that motion to reflect it accurately? That it just be called, or it doesn't make a difference, really? Doesn't make a difference, okay.
I second his motion.
Can I ask a question about that?
Councilman Carlson.
The chief of staff last time seemed to have a concern about liability of the city and the cost of liability, and although I'd rather have it for city elected officials and employees, at the very least, we need it for elected officials. And so whether we need to put that in the motion or not, I think that's part of the discussion. And last time I was very frustrated. I think the public was incensed by the conversation. It seemed like the administration has no interest in protecting city council. We know the city attorney's office has no interest, and in fact has worked against city council members. And we've got to, it's pretty disgusting that that's happening. And we've got to set up a situation where we protect elected officials from frivolous lawsuits and the threat of frivolous lawsuits. Otherwise, if the city attorney's office and risk management take the point of view that we're protecting the city, city attorney's office still has two other clients that they have to protect. If the mayor was getting sued, I'm certain that they would find a way to defend the mayor and pay for legal fees. But if it's city council members, they seem not to be interested in that. And if they think that by allowing one set of individuals or one category of individuals to sue individual city council members, it protects them from something else. It doesn't, because there are people on opposing sides who are going to sue and file all kinds of complaints, and we're going to end up with chaos in this city. If we do the basic humane thing and thing that's right that other cities do and protect elected officials and hopefully employees too, then we're not going to have a huge war in this community like we're seeing right now. This is unprecedented that previous mayors and previous city council members have come out and said, why is the administration attacking city council and allowing city council to be attacked? I would beg you and ask you, for the sake of our community, not just us individually, to come back with a solution that protects us. It is really disgusting and despicable that the city attorney's office not only did not protect city council members, but actively worked against them, which obviously is a violation of the law. So it'll be up to them to decide what they're going to do about that. But we cannot allow that to happen in the city. We have to be civil, and we have to follow law. Thank you.
Second. So,
We have a motion, yes, I was going to say, we have a motion made by Councilman Miranda.
I'm not taking any sides here. I'm just saying that this council member, I don't need support, and I don't need an insurance company to back me up if I'm gonna do something wrong. However, if I did something wrong, and I count on the litigators that the city has to protect me, providing that when I go see the city attorney's office, and they give me an advice, that I follow that advice. If I don't follow that advice, that city attorney, and if I had a private attorney, would tell me, there's the door, get out and leave. I'm not going to represent you. And as far as I'm concerned, if I was to go to a private attorney, and that private attorney, he or she tells me, here's what I want you to do, and I answer no, that attorney's not going to take my case. Neither should a city attorney. So I'm not saying anything happened, I'm just saying that's what it is. However, I once read something about a James Reed that said that Charlie Miranda was a moxie guy, a multimillionaire that owned homes. Well, I'm on the trail of James Reed, and I'm going to find out who James Reed is, and I don't need no protection from anybody, from the city council attorney to anybody. I fight my own battles. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Martin Shelby.
I would just ask that my own personal name be taken off of that. It's not really specific to me. And if you want to remove council attorney, that's fine too, but I just, it's rather unusual to see my name on there.
I agree with that. Put you in a bad spot. I agree with that.
Thank you. So is that possible to have that motion amended, just to strike that?
Councilman Goods.
What is he asking again?
He wants his
Take my
changed.
name, take my name off of that.
That's fine, right? His name should be on there.
Please refer to our clerk.
City council
Yeah,
attorney.
City council attorney.
Okay.
Then the city council attorney. He's right.
Is that satisfactory, Mr. Shelby?
Is it by unanimous consent?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
We still have the motion.
Oh, you still have the
I'm sorry. To amend the motion by Councilman Goods, you're seconding that amendment?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay. Councilman Carlson, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say that, to Mr. Miranda's point, if you hired a private attorney and then the private attorney set up one-on-one meetings with your colleagues and made a case against you, and pulled out evidence that was skewed in a way to make you look bad and to hurt your name, you would be pretty upset. And if you thought you had representation from an attorney, but then you got sued and you found out that you didn't, you would be upset also. If you thought you had attorney coverage and then when you got sued, you found out that you had no attorney-client privilege, and there was going to be no defense of attorney-client privilege, you would be upset. If you found out that instead of attorney-client privilege, that your attorney spent hours of deposition throwing you under the bus, you would be upset. And furthermore, if your attorney went to the media and proactively said disparaging things about you that could have caused you to get sued, you would be very upset about that too. And so I think there's a bit of civility we have to do here, and we need to look at Florida bar rules. There's some gray area about how legal departments of cities are handled, and there's some leeway that the Florida bar gives, but we've got to fix this situation so there are not conflicts of interest and information that seems skewed toward one client versus the other, or where attorneys act on one hand like they're representing someone and then on the other hand don't. Thank you.
I'm just going to say that I believe in the legal process, no matter what attorney it is, and I'm not going to take this city down the drain with me. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Goods.
I think the gist of it all is that when I look at certain situations, and I try to find out, there's really no policies or rules for city council. It seems to be all for employees. And it seems like we're kind of treated a little bit differently. So once I kind of do a little more research, I may be coming back with some type of motion in reference to, and getting Mr. Shelby, that we have a policy manual and handbook for city council, how council operates in different situations and with different employees and different people, because I can't seem to find that anywhere. So I can see the points that are being made. I think that's a point that needs to be driven home sooner rather than later. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion on the floor made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Can you read that again, please? That was about 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
The motion was to continue this item to May 19, 2022, to coincide with item number 64, and to amend a previous motion that included Martin Shelby's name and to just leave it as city council attorney.
Roll call vote. I'm sorry,
I didn't hear it all. I'm just gonna vote no just for the sake of it.
roll call vote, please.
Miranda,
No.
Hurtak, Carlson,
Yes.
Goode,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Miranda voting no and Hurtak being absent.
Could you please tell us the coverages in legal matters that council does have? Do we not have protection, legal protection, I don't want to say D&O, but that type of insurance?
Below 500,000.
I'm sorry, I'm asking,
I'm just saying.
I understand.
We do carry coverage for elected officials, which includes you and also city employees. The amount of coverage, the SIR, which is known as the deductible, is $500,000. And it is a $2 million annual plus a $2 million aggregate annually.
Thank you.
And can you tell, Mr. Chair,
Councilman Carlson.
can you tell us how the decision is made as to whether somebody's covered below 500,000, please?
Below 500,000, that's really determined through the legal department.
We could.
By the city
we could
attorney
have a
who's appointed by
claim-
by the mayor, correct?
I'm sorry.
It's made by a political appointee. It's made by the city attorney.
The decision's made by the stakeholders that are involved, but filing a claim would be downstream of that. So the risk manager wouldn't make the determination whether or not to file a claim. And I know we're gonna come back and talk about it, but just kind of generically speaking, we could make the determination not to file a claim on something that would be in excess of $500,000 as a city, potentially, because when we do file a claim, because we've got an umbrella policy of all of our various coverages, every action has a reaction downstream, and so we would be cognizant of that. Regardless of the situation, whether or not it was prudent for us to file a claim or as a self-insured city pay out of pocket. So that $500,000 is the number that makes a carrier feel comfortable that we're also exhibiting some sense of risk before we go forth with
My only,
policy.
and I said this last time, my only concern is we need, below 500,000, we need to make it objective. It should not be up to arbitrary decision of somebody who's appointed politically. And the same thing for health insurance. If somebody needed a lung transplant, you would not want your life to be up to whether somebody politically liked you or didn't like you.
Right.
And the other example I gave is if I accidentally parked in Chairman Citro's parking space, I'm obviously breaking the rules of the city. If I get hit by a car and go to the hospital, is the city going to deny health care coverage because I broke a rule by parking in the wrong parking space? And, there's different levels of degree. We've got a National Justice Department civil rights investigation going on right now. And there's been a whole bunch of press conferences and press release made about 5 text messages. And if you weigh brutal civil rights abuses over the last 10 years compared to 5 missing text messages that we don't know why they were lost, but the city attorney's office says, oh, we're not going to cover one person, but we're going to cover the other. I think we need to fix that so it's objective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right, information reports, Councilman Carlson.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we ask pass an ordinance that we ask city staff to come back on June 2nd with a proposed ordinance to require the administration to give 10 days notice to city council of civil rights or criminal investigations on the city. So in the case of the Justice Department's investigation, it apparently started in December, and we just found out last Friday from the media. Maybe some of you all were briefed, but I found out from the media. So I think I'd like to propose bringing back a proposed ordinance on June 2nd to require that administration give 10 days notice to City Council of any civil rights or criminal investigations upon the city.
A second.
There's a motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Goose. Any discussion?
If I may, and I'm glad to support it, and whatnot, but I guess, red flags, which is they may need more time than June 2nd, who knows, right? You never know, and then what the form of notice is gonna be, is it individual notice? And again, I'll leave that for you to work it out, but I'm glad to support it, just my thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? My question to that would be 10 days' notice. If there's pending litigation, can somebody else talk about something, or is there, I'm asking counsel here, is there some sort of gag order where someone, if there's pending litigation, can't discuss it? Or what if that comes into play? Well, then the administration has failed to notify us within 10 days.
That's a fair question, and it's one that I don't know the answer to, but I will say that the legal department, I'm sure, would be able to advise whether that's appropriate or not. The motion is what the motion is, but if there are reasons that the legal department thinks that that would be inappropriate, then I'm sure that they would communicate that to the maker of the motion at the city council.
We have a motion made by Councilman Carlson.
I'm
Sorry.
not against the motion, but I'd like some clarity in it, because we have two breaks, one in the summer and one in the winter in December, one in June and July, part of.
That's true.
And does that mean that they have to trace you down wherever you're at? Somebody may be on vacation, or does that mean you just send a letter to the clerk's office? I don't know what it means, so you're gonna have to clear it up somewhere along the line. And you gotta count usually in legalities, and I'm not saying about this ordinance, it includes holidays and weekends.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Goose. Roll call vote.
Question.
You want a roll call?
Marcia, I would prefer one. Something on this, I would prefer one. Hold on. Martin Shelby.
Before you take a vote, you requested it in the form of an ordinance.
I presume that if the city attorney has concerns or caveats they want to put in, they'll either build it in and they'll brief us on it, or they'll ask for to be delayed.
Okay. I was just thinking that there are other forms of communication to the administration rather than in the form of an ordinance that might be faster and as effective, perhaps.
No, but if we have an ordinance in place, then well, let's see what happens.
Ready?
Roll call vote.
All right, Miranda,
Yes.
Pertec, Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Second, I would like to request that city staff report to us on June 2nd as to an update on the Justice Department investigation.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Hurtak, Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Two more quick ones. I would like to ask that this city Public Works Department report back to us on June 2nd about the possibility of any savings that we can use in the water department to reduce water rates.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak, Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda, and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Last one, thank you for bearing with me. Cynthia Gandhi Zenabar is retiring from HP Plant Museum after, I think it's 31 years. And so I'd like to give an accommodation on May 18th off premises, please.
I don't mind that. I had Mary do the same thing, but I'll yield to yours.
Oh.
No, it's fine. I was talking to Mary about it, but you handle it. I
Do you want
withdraw
it?
my, no,
I don't
it's
care.
fine. I'm fine with it.
Let you put your name on it. I
No,
don't
no,
care.
no.
All the names on it.
No,
You and I can give it to them together.
no.
Councilman.
I mean it. No, it's fine.
Motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor say aye.
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 Is there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Goods.
Well, gentlemen, you know, this housing crisis is not something that we can build ourselves out of. This crisis will require several strategies. There are hundreds of homes in East Tampa alone that are unoccupied and deteriorating due to probate, so there are many, many more throughout the city. If the probate issue is addressed, many of these homes could be brought online for rental or home ownership. I'd like to make a motion for staff to research creating a program to address probate issues and to bring additional housing options online, and can bring that back to us on June 16, 2022.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote, please.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda, Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak, Goods,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Anything else, Councilman Goods? Councilman Maniscalco.
No, nothing at this time. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Vieira.
Yeah, we have a commendation meeting on what, May, is it Tuesday? If I may, I know this is a last minute one, and I forgot to do this, if I may. Colonel DJ Reyes, who is just with us, was recently inducted in, which is a big deal, into the Florida Veterans Hall of Fame, and I wanted to have him
Second.
here for a city council commendation for that. Yep.
Motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Nothing else. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Miranda.
Yes, sir, I have one. I'd like to make a motion for the administration to appear and present the fiscal year mid-year review during the May 19th regular city council meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Hurtak, Miranda,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Mr. Shelby, anything for you before we proceed?
Yes, sir. It's fitting that it was just after the last motion regarding the budget mid-year report, because this involves the Citizens Budget and Advisory Committee, as Councilman Goods had mentioned earlier in the day. It has a need to have staffing support, and pursuant to the resolution from 2011, it does state specifically that such clerical, secretarial, and other services shall be needed, as shall be needed by the committee, shall be rendered through the city council staff. That's the way that states. Also, that resolution does also need to be updated and revised. So I suspect traditionally what's happened in the past is that the finance chair's legislative aide, my understanding is that they took on that task, and I believe it's a greater task. It's become a greater task than it was in the past, and we're looking for some sort of guidance from City Council with regard to how best to address this issue. We have a new chair, obviously. Congratulations, sir, if I haven't said so publicly. But the question then ultimately is, at the last meeting, unfortunately, they failed to get a quorum. So there was no meeting this past week, actually yesterday. So that being said, what we need to do is we need to solve the logistics issues to be able to support this board and to get it clear about its mission moving forward, so that they can do what it is that they feel needs to be done in support of presenting you information for their budget, from them, for your consideration of the budget. So I'm looking for guidance from council.
Any comments, any questions? Councilman Goods.
I mean, I think that the resolution is outdated. I think that needs to be updated, number one. I'm thinking that maybe Mr. Shelby gets with the new chairman, and then also maybe get some advice from the other council members, and then bring it back at our next meeting, and then we vote on what needs to be implemented and put in. That committee is very important, and they're doing a lot of good work now. Not saying the other committees didn't before, but the city has grown, and again, they were operating out of order that we found out about, and it needs to be in compliance. So hopefully Mr. Shelby can get with the chair and come up with a solution in reference to the members on that committee, to let them know that if you selected someone, that they need to be a part of that committee, missing dates and missing times and so forth. And then if we need the clerk to help us to where send a notice to them, or since we don't have the appropriate staff right now, because staff in itself with our aides are very busy, and if we need the clerk to send them notices for their meetings, then let's do that until we can get it into the budget in reference to becoming to compliance that the charter says we have an audit person on that committee, and also the necessary secretarial staff.
Okay. And I'm happy to help, you know, whatever.
When is their next meeting?
They are scheduled for the first Wednesday of the month in June. And now what you have is you have this mid-year report coming up before then. The other issue is that in talking to Mike Perry, it turns out that from a staff perspective, because the input and participation of staff is crucially important to the success of that committee getting their information. And it turns out that I learned just yesterday that Wednesdays in particular are the most difficult time for staff to be able to participate. Friday is what I was told was their the day of the week that they had met in the past, and that works best for staff. So that's a discussion that staff needed to have, or needs to have, with the committee, but unfortunately it couldn't take place yesterday because there was no quorum.
Which members of staff are you talking about? Are you talking about the clerk's office? Are you talking about IT? Are you talking about legal? Are you which part of staff are you talking about?
Well, generally, the request of the Budget Committee was to have somebody there from Budget and Finance regularly, but if they request other departments to come in, it includes departments throughout the city on an as requested basis.
Councilman Carlson.
Thank you. What if, I'm happy to do this if you want, but how about if we make a motion to have the city council attorney circulate the resolution creating the committee to all city council members, and then we can come back to the, and discuss it on June 2nd during staff reports to recommend collectively changes to it so that we do all the changes at once.
Second?
That's
June 2nd be too long because they meet.
that's going to be a long process.
What long,
At a public meeting to be able to do that?
well, I don't know if you're allowed to take input from us individually, but I presume you would have done that anyway. You just can't share it between us. But I think, for example, one of the things is I understand staff are scared that they're like hunting for negative things to find, and we can clarify that in the language of what we describe. I mean, to me, there are eyes and ears to gather more detailed information on the budget, not on a hunting expedition to find something bad. And I think just changing some language, we probably can just change the enabling. And then if we need to in the resolution, we can put attendance requirements or whatever. So if somebody misses 2 or 3 meetings, then we can replace them.
And to that was what my questions were about, to find a short-term solution, whether the staff that was needed was from clerks or IT or legal or finance, so we could find a short-term until we collectively find a long-term solution. So, but Councilman Carlson has a motion. Is there a second to it?
Yep. When is that board scheduled to meet again? Because we'd like.
This is the long-term solution, though. So
It is. The short-term solution is how we get everything done
Yeah.
in preparation for the next meeting on the first Wednesday.
And that was
June.
my specific questions. What do they need from us the most as far as staff goes?
Somebody to take the minutes, prepare the minutes, in advance of that to work with the chair of that committee to put together an agenda to make sure that the clerk gets the notice, or maybe the clerk does the notice, that the notice goes out, and that it's at a location that is in the sunshine, and that we make sure the minutes are taken and recorded.
Would it be too much to ask for this council to ask the clerk's office for help for just that one meeting until we figure out something long-term?
council's pleasure. I don't know. I don't know what the clerk, I know the clerk is short-staffed.
Yep.
Unless there's a legislative aide that wants to volunteer for the one time.
That was going to be my next statement,
No,
and we're short there.
yes.
So how do we solve this short term before we get together and decide long term? Councilman Goode.
I mean, unfortunately, we have to do this, but the clerk sends out the notices. So unfortunately, it may fall upon it because we don't have the people to do it. So they send out the notices, and I don't think it would be that much. I know they're short too, but to contact the chairman of that committee and see what they're gonna, what they need, and just get it done.
The clerk had sent the notices throughout the city for the different boards and ends up posting the notice. They don't necessarily draw up the notice.
Well, who normally draws up the notices?
It's usually the department or legal. So we don't ever draw up the notices. They provide it to our department, and then we would distribute it and post it downstairs.
So basically, we've never been drawing up notices anyway, basically what you're telling me.
No, they've been doing that.
Who's been doing it?
The legislative aid to the finance chair. Or whatever legislative aid, a council member decided to have that aide do that in the past. There was a legislative aide that was the administrative staff. And somewhere along the line, position shifted and workload changed. So, with regard to next month's notice and agenda, the only thing that I'd be concerned about is somebody there to take the minutes and to be able to draw up the minutes. I mean, I could handle the notice.
Mr. Ling, I apologize, but I'm going to ask the clerk's office to have someone there to take minutes for the next budget and citizens budget and finance review. Can that be accommodated for that one meeting? I apologize.
See, the issue is we're very short-staffed.
And I understand, I wouldn't.
We also have a code enforcement meeting on that Wednesday.
Yes, that's true.
I have agenda review going on. It's a lot going on. We would absolutely love to help, but we are extremely short-staffed.
It's a shame Eileen Rosario is not still around with us.
Motion for $1,000 bonus for that?
Oh. Gentlemen, I've asked. What are the other options? Anybody want to give up their aid for the evening?
Is it possible?
Actually, it's 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours from 10 to 12 on Wednesday before council meeting. It looks like the date of that actually is June 1st this time.
Is it possible that clerk could hire a temp and we could just pay out of our city council budgets?
I mean,
That's a lot.
Marty?
possible, but the experience may not be there.
I will do it for the one meeting.
Could you state your name for the record?
Lisa Edwards, legislative aide to Councilman Maniscalco. I will do the minutes for that one meeting. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Edwards.
Still gotta have a long-term goal. Still gotta have a long-term.
Mr. Chair, could we vote on the other one too?
I'm sorry, Councilman Carlson, what's the other one? We were discussing this for so long. What was the other one?
The other one was that, to ask the other motion was to ask the city council attorney to circulate the resolution that created the budget committee and ask for each of us to give input and then have a discussion during staff reports on June 2nd to collect our input and recommend changes, consensus on changes to the enabling resolution.
You've heard the motion of Councilman Carlson, is seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Goode?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Hurtak? Miranda? And Citro?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Oh, I have one more item.
Sir.
No, I'm sorry to do that, council, but this came up at the last workshop, and I just want to clarify this so we don't have the issue come up again. We're in a hybrid state now, and the question is, when do you want to take public comment? Do you want to go back to what the original rules were, which was discussions after each item, or do you want to have general public comment up front? Or do you want to have both and only allow them to speak once on each subject? So the question is, which is the way I think you handled it the last time at the last workshop, but the way it was, your standing rules state public comment on the matter which is the subject of the workshop shall be taken up to a total of 30 minutes. At the end of each workshop agenda item, 3 minutes per speaker. No official action on the matter which is the subject of the workshop shall be taken during or after a workshop unless the public is afforded the opportunity to comment prior to action. Now, there was a time that there was no general public comment on workshop days. So that just, you went right into the workshops and you allowed only public comment on the workshop items. It's council's pleasure how you want to conduct your meetings and with.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I say we do it like we did last Thursday, where we had general public comment at the beginning, but those that spoke may not get, they have to speak general public comment, not on any item on the agenda, because then after each workshop item, we'll have that public comment.
But if they want to come in and speak because they want to be first on the agenda, say their piece and then leave, would that be acceptable as well to council? Because that's happened
Yeah, I
in the
mean, I
past.
believe Mr. Robinson spoke, and he had another matter to attend to, and he was not able to be here, but he didn't come back for a second bite at the apple. So that was, for the convenience of folks, because I know they got to go to work and everything else, so.
So the consensus is then to have general public comment and also speak after each item.
Yep. And we got up pretty early, too, so it didn't, make for a super long day.
You want to make that a motion?
Then I'd like to make a motion that we use the same format like we did last Thursday, which is that general public comment, no second bite at the apple, and then after each workshop item, people can speak on that said item.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Roll call vote.
Viera.
Yes.
Goods.
Yes.
Hurtak. Carlson.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Miranda. And Citro.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Motion carried unanimously with Hurtak being absent.
Move to receive and file.
We have a motion to receive and file by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Without objection, we are adjourned.